In the heart of 19th-century London, amidst the Industrial Revolution's relentless march and the city's dizzying growth, there existed a stark divide. While dazzling shop windows and gaslit streets dazzled the eyes of the upper classes, a different reality prevailed in the shadowy byways and fog-choked alleys, especially in the impoverished district of Whitechapel. Here, poverty stalked the residents, many of them immigrants, like a spectre, whispering tales of despair. Life here was a grim struggle against destitution, hunger, and now a lurking terror that haunted the gaslit nights. This sinister turn began in the summer of 1888, when a series of brutal crimes shook the very foundations of Whitechapel. 5 women, all of them sex workers, were viciously attacked, mutilated, and left for dead in the labyrinthine streets of this dense working-class neighborhood. The first victim, Mary Ann Nichols, was discovered in the early hours of August, lying lifeless in a pool of blood behind a wall in Bucks Row. Her throat had been slit, and her body bore witness to a horrifying post-mortem mutilation. Just weeks later, on September, the killer struck again. This time, the victim was Annie Poley, whose battered and mutilated form was found in the same area. A few days after the second murder, the killer claimed his third victim, Elizabeth Stride. She too was found in Whitechapel, her throat slashed, but with fewer signs of mutilation compared to the previous victims. Then came Catherine Eddowes, whose mutilated body was discovered in Mitre Square on September 7. All of these women had been brutally attacked, but Catherine suffered the most severe injuries. Lastly, on October the 5th and most gruesome murder occurred. Mary Jane Kelly was found in the doorway of her lodgings at number 13, Dorset Street. Her injuries rivaled those inflicted on Catherine Eddowes, further emphasizing the killer's sinister pattern. As news of these ghastly murders spread, fear tightened its grip on Whitechapel. People hurried home before nightfall, huddling behind closed doors. Even the bravest policeman felt a chill of unease in the face of this merciless predator. In an attempt to quell the mounting terror, the police issued warnings, organized patrols, and implored citizens to report any suspicious characters. However, despite these measures, the mysterious assailant continued his reign of terror, always staying one step ahead of the authorities. Amidst this growing panic, the London Metropolitan Police Force was under immense pressure to apprehend the killer. Scotland Yard detectives combed through the grim details of each crime scene, seeking patterns or clues that could lead them to the perpetrator. The first 2 murders, those of Mary Ann Nichols and Annie Poley, bore similarities that hinted at a methodical killer. Both women were found in the same area, both had been prostitutes, and both had been subjected to similar mutilations. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that the killer displayed surgical precision in his attacks, suggesting a person with anatomical knowledge. This grim deduction led investigators to suspect a doctor or someone with medical training. Among the theories proposed, the involvement of a medical student gained traction. This theory posited that a student seeking to gain practical anatomical knowledge, perhaps in preparation for an upcoming examination, had turned to dissecting the bodies of unsuspecting victims. The police focused their efforts on several key areas. They scrutinized medical schools, checked the backgrounds of recent graduates, and even searched for missing body parts that might have been used in illicit anatomical studies. Additionally, the press played a significant role in the investigation, publishing descriptions of the killer and urging the public to come forward with any information. This media attention, while helpful in disseminating information, also contributed to the sensationalism surrounding the case. Despite the extensive efforts, the trail of the Whitechapel murderer remained elusive. Many suspects were questioned, but none could be conclusively linked to the crimes. The killer seemed to have vanished into thin air after each heinous act, leaving behind only a haunting legacy of fear and unanswered questions. As the weeks went by, the shadow of the Whitechapel murders loomed larger over London. The killer's identity remained a mystery, and the terror of another attack kept the city on edge. People argued over the killer's motive, whether he was a foreigner or a local, a madman or a methodical killer, each theory gaining some credence before fading into the fog of uncertainty. However, amid this chaos, a man named Montague John Druitt emerged as a prominent suspect. A barrister by profession, Druitt's sudden disappearance shortly after the final murder led to speculation. The police, intrigued by this development, focused on him as the prime suspect. They believed that Druitt, under the pressure of his involvement in the case, had taken his own life. But despite this, no conclusive evidence linking him to the crimes was ever uncovered, leaving his connection to the Whitechapel murders ambiguous. In the absence of tangible leads, the police intensified their patrols and urged witnesses to come forward. Yet the killer continued to evade capture, striking fear into the hearts of Londoners. He seemed to be mocking the authorities, daring them to stop him. And as the investigation dragged on, the public grew impatient. They demanded justice, and those demanding answers started pointing fingers. Rumors swirled, suspicions flared, and the atmosphere thickened with accusation. In the end, the case of the 5 Whitechapel murders shocked the nation, but the identity of the killer remained a secret. No one knows what drove him to commit these heinous acts, or why he spared some victims while brutally attacking others. Perhaps his motives lay in the dark recesses of a disturbed mind forever beyond comprehension. The Whitechapel murders of 1888 remain one of the most infamous mysteries in criminal history. The killer, known only as Jack the Ripper, terrorized the impoverished streets of Whitechapel, leaving behind a trail of mutilated bodies and unanswered questions. Despite extensive investigations and countless theories, his true identity has never been confirmed. Was he a respected member of society, a foreigner, a medical student, or simply a madman? Each theory adds a layer to the mystery, but none can claim certainty in the face of the Ripper's cunning. These brutal crimes not only shook Victorian London, but continue to fascinate and terrify us even today. The Ripper's methods, his surgical precision, and his apparent knowledge of human anatomy point to a killer with a disturbing understanding of the human body. The mutilation of his victims suggests a desire to inflict psychological torment, leaving investigators baffled by the killer's motives. The passage of over a century has not diminished the impact of these crimes. The narrow, dark streets of Whitechapel continue to echo with the stories of Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Poley, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. Their names serve as a grim reminder of the brutality that unfolded on those fog-laden nights. The murders attributed to Jack the Ripper include those of 5 women in London's Whitechapel district. Each victim was brutally assaulted and mutilated, leading to their deaths. The case remains unsolved, and the motive behind the killings is unknown. Several men have been implicated as possible suspects, but none have been conclusively linked to the crimes. Jack the Ripper's methods were particularly gruesome. The killer mutilated the bodies of his victims in ways that indicated anatomical knowledge, leading investigators to believe that he may have had medical training. This detail added a disturbing layer to the crimes, suggesting a level of sophistication and premeditation. The investigation into the Whitechapel murders remains one of the most extensive and intensive in history. Despite the efforts of Scotland Yard and other law enforcement agencies, the killer, Jack the Ripper, was never caught. The case has generated countless theories, but none have been definitively proven. The impact of Jack the Ripper's crimes extended beyond the immediate aftermath. The case contributed to the social and political reform in Whitechapel, including improved living conditions and the legalization of prostitution. It also had a profound effect on the way crimes were investigated and reported. Today, the story of Jack the Ripper continues to captivate people worldwide. Books, films, and documentaries have explored various aspects of the case, from the gruesome details of the crimes to the psychological profile of the killer. In conclusion, the Jack the Ripper case stands as a chilling reminder of the depths of human brutality. The identity of the killer remains a mystery, and the motives behind the crimes may never be fully understood. Nevertheless, the investigation and subsequent theories have left an indelible mark on the world of criminology, and continue to fascinate those who seek to understand the darkest aspects of human nature. What are your thoughts on this haunting historical mystery? Feel free to share your opinions or ask questions in the comments section below. Your engagement is appreciated. Thanks for watching.